For our presentation, could you ensure that multiple people can share at a time so that we can like seamlessly switch?
So
I'll
you
make
want,
sure everybody but Derek has it. Is that okay?
all right. So
You got
it's
it.
normally
There you
one
go.
participant at a time, and then I can set it
Right.
to multiple participants because you're simultaneously. Dual
That's
monitors
what we prefer.
recommended.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, that grays out all the other settings on who can share, so that probably means anyone can share at any time.
You could change
That's
it.
fine.
Well, nobody
We'll
else.
hope we
is
don't
Well,
doing
keep
it.
that's
on.
what we have anyway. All right.
Okay.
So what happens when more than one person shares at a time? Do we see the two desktops split? I don't think we've ever done this.
No. You have to switch to the other one in order to see it. It doesn't
I
take
do
over
it?
what you have. No, the individual
Oh,
user. We're just
whoever
gonna
shares last goes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
interesting.
Yeah. Would it be all right if we check that real quick? I'll be
Sure.
sharing slides and then Angela will be sharing the website itself. Cool. Let me just check share the slides themselves. Everyone can see the slides.
Yep.
Copy. I will
Yep.
stop share. Angela, whenever you're good, feel free to share.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, I'm sharing. Sorry.
That looks like Google Doc.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like the stream thing is
Do you
actually
wanna-
working too.
Oh, there you go.
Is it? Am I sharing though?
It's live.
It went down. Do you want to do it again just to double check? We saw the website
Okay.
for a moment, then it stopped.
Okay.
And are you
Here?
gonna do yours to double check, Derek?
Yeah.
Just so
So
that it's-
there's that, and then I'll share back to the slides.
Do you all want to practice that handoff real quick?
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Blah blah
Okay.
blah blah. Here's to talk more about the website. Here's Angela.
Yay, Andrew's here.
Blah, blah,
Cool.
blah, blah.
And this is our website, not Google Doc. Cool. Is
Please
it a
stop
web?
sharing, Derek.
Oh, I'll stop.
Alright.
So I need to stop.
I
I'll
will-
stop. There we go.
Okay.
Cool.
So now we are
Perfect.
back to. Oh,
Great. And I will reshare. Awesome. But a momentary pass. Perfect. I think that's yeah, that's what we practiced before. Yeah, meets our expectations.
We've got like 3 minutes and then we'll go.
You'll forgive me, I have a beverage, water.
No forgiveness. How dare
Oh.
you hydrate?
Oh dear. I was recommended to not perform bodily functions while on camera.
That's been going around.
Good advice. Yeah, thank you for having a unified background there. That helps us with the spotlighting.
So nice. So much easier.
Oh, this is actually just a large poster board. I have this image printed on behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who did that? Billie Eilish did that for her Tiny Desk conference. Looked like she was in the office, and then they panned back, and they had just printed out images and like put them up on the wall.
I should send a link to the, someone has a skeleton in their front yard that's sitting in front of a skeleton Zoom meeting.
That's how
Print
it
it.
feels some days.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to.
Oh, Kat, just to double check, did Anna find the YouTube streaming link okay? Any word, any difficulties on that front?
I didn't get a response from her, but I just sent her a reminder email, so hopefully she'll catch it.
Awesome, yeah. And then it looks like the recordings of previous days are also available, so.
Yeah,
Awesome.
hopefully it'll be good. I didn't, yeah.
Out of curiosity, Drew, have you come across any research or articles recommending self-view on in video conferencing or self-view off?
In terms of performances, I've heard that it's better to have it off because sometimes you'll get too fixated on how you're looking. So that it's better to have it on and like do like a mirror check and go like, all right, I see where I am, I'm centered, everything's looking good, and then turn it off so that you can focus on projecting as opposed to going, oh, look at that facial expression I'm making.
Cool.
But some people like to continually check themselves. I don't know if you'd say that's narcissistic or.
It's like walking your whole life with a mirror in front of your face.
Right. All right, we're a little after 4. So let's get started. Welcome everybody to the last day of half presentations here in Zoom land. We have 4 teams going today. For those of you who are joining us, it's the first time seeing us in Zoom. The teams will have 15 minutes. They're spotlighted, so if you put it in speaker view, you can see the teams presenting, and they're also sharing their slides. Museum Live obviously is going first. They're the ones we have spotlighted. And we have hyperpickle, mixthesia, and protochamp following. So you have 15 minutes. Keep an eye on the time since we're all on computers, and then 5 minutes Q&A. So whenever you all are ready.
Awesome. Just get my screen up here. Make sure I can see what I need to see. Cool. Get a last pre-flight check from the team. Everyone good? Awesome. Let's get the show on the road. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out to our Halves presentation. We are museum.live. This is our team. My name is Derek, and I am a producer on the team. And these are our faculty and clients, Chris and Brenda, and our client is Ana Rodriguez Castillo of the Frick Pittsburgh. So you can think of her as both a client as well as a point of contact, acting as a liaison between our 5 partner museum institutions. So putting it all together at the top, we are developing a website and documentation for the staff of various museums to design and execute live virtual tours. So these live virtual tours or experiences are designed to take place over Zoom and are assisted by a website-based tool. So this is what we'll be talking about today. And here to kind of unpack the problem as well as what our clients' needs are is Grace.
Thank you, Derek. So imagine you're a docent of a museum. You love sharing your stories with your guests, but in March 2020, this changed forever with COVID-19. You missed all the special things that you love so much because no one is allowed to come to your museum anymore. And so you look for new technologies to connect with your guests. This story really happened for our museums. Our staff are looking for ways to give tours virtually because in-person tours are no longer possible in a post-COVID world. Our project is primarily for museum staff who used to give live tours in conventional museum spaces. We recognize that our secondary audience are the guests of those museums. However, we trust our staff to create their experience for their guests so that we can focus as much as possible on meeting the needs of museum staff. Now, I'd like to talk about what a docent normally does to put on a conventional in-person live tour. There are 2 steps. Before they present a tour, museum staff prepare. They work with their team to brainstorm a tour, and they gather all the materials needed, like visual aids. Then they practice talking points. During the tour, museum staff present. Of course, they go through their prepared materials, physical space of their museum to their guests. But more importantly, during the entire length of their tour, they interact with their guests by looking at them and listening to them, and answering any questions live. The pre-production team, who had heavily researched this project during the summer, gave us an initial design for how to translate these tasks to a virtual setting. And based on their recommendations and our playtesting, we designed a website to be used with Zoom to translate these live tours to a virtual setting. So let me briefly translate the task of an in-person tour to our virtual platforms. Before they give the virtual live tour, the host will prepare materials and talking points through our website. And then during the tour, they showcase the physical space through the website by screen sharing prepared images or videos, or sometimes through Zoom itself. They interact with their guests in real time through Zoom. And then they answer questions with their existing knowledge by sharing content from the website live for their guests. And here's a look at our deliverables and metrics. Our concrete deliverables to meet our clients' requirements are a website and documentation for how to use the website with Zoom. This documentation is focused on how to use and not on how we build this. Finally, we use playtesting to check if what we build is actually meeting those needs. So putting that all together, These are the problems we've had to face so far this semester. Number 1, how do we translate these in-person texts to virtual tour? Number 2, what will make our tool simple for museum staff to use? And Angela will talk in more detail about how we tackled this problem so far.
Thank you, Grace. So on top of the problems that we identified, I'm going to talk about what we've done so far to solve these problems and meet our partners' needs. So let's look into the first question. As Grace mentioned before, these are 2 phases of what a staff member has to do to give a tour to a live audience using our website and Zoom. So those phases are present and prepare. First, let's focus on preparing to give a tour. So to prepare, first you need media files as the visual aids. And those can be organized as a stop, which represent the talking points in the presentation mode. And then you can use these stops to make the final tour that you give to your tour guest. And now I'll move to my demo screen and let's see, as a museum staff member, how would you do that with our website right now? Okay, so everyone see my screen? Cool. Yeah, so as you can see, this is the homepage of our website. And this is a tour named the Cone Gallery Tour. And it consists of 3 individual stops. And if you click on the stop, you can see there are multiple media files live within it. So this is a stop. Okay, so now I will demonstrate how you will create a stop like this from our backend. So if we go to SS dashboards, so this is the backend dashboard of our website. So our first task is to upload media files. So we need to go to media tab, and then this is the media library page where we can upload the media files we get from our institution. And then after we got that, our next task is to create a stop with that. So if we just go to the stop tab, and then we can create a new stop as a format of a blog post. So let's say I want to have a stop talking about the wing of the Cone Gallery. Okay, so I just put in the cone wing, and then you can fill in the description text you want to use. And if you look at the bottom area of the website, now you can add the media file, just upload it. Let's say I want like pictures about Cone Gallery. So you can add this media file, you just upload to this stop. So the last step, if you look over here, this is where you can set a feature image for your stop that will help you recognize the stop from the front page. So after all this step, let me just publish it. Cool, so now the Cone Wing stop is ready for being used in a tour. So let's go back to our front page. There's something, notice that you can always create a new tour here and add it in, but it will be empty. So now I will just demonstrate it with a existing tour. So if we click on the tour title here, this is the tour page, and I can click on edit this tour and then click on add stops. Cool, so this is the stop we just created from our backend. And you can also create, you can also add like other stop maybe. Cool. And then you can also remove the stop you don't want, and you can easily drag and drop to rearrange the stops as the way you like. So let's say I want to talk about the Cone Sister at the end of the tour, I will just put it here. Cool. So after I get the order I want, I get everything I want, I will just click on done editing. And now I'm ready to give this Cone Gallery tour. So this is, like, as I mentioned, this is a tour page, which will allow the guests to have like an overall impression on your tour. And then I would just go to like, click on stop similarly before. And then this is the stop page where you will have this full screen mode or normal mode for a media file. And you have this collapsible description text or some other related topics you would like to refer to during your presentation. Cool. Yeah, so cool. This is what we've built so far. And next, I will introduce Ningshan to talk about our tech choices behind this website.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. So having our system design in mind, we did tech research about how to build our website. So after consulting with ETC tech faculty and professional web developers, we decided to build a website using a content management system instead of building everything from scratch. So with simplicity in mind, we chose WordPress as a starting point. WordPress is the most popular CMS for building websites. It provides us with a well-designed and functional dashboard UI for managing media files and databases. And for the front-end development, we decided to use React as a framework. React does exceptionally well in creating good-looking user interfaces, which fits our need for building screen-share-ready UI for our tour guests. And for hosting and web ops service, we pick Penson as the provider. It provides WordPress hosting and support the agile workflow, including integrated version controls and easy-to-use deployment pipeline. Furthermore, it makes our life much easier to hand off the Penson account and code base to the client and other museum partners at the end of this semester. Continue to the second problem. What will make our tool simple for museum staff to use? As part of our deliverables, we have step-by-step instructions about how to use our tool of both dashboard and website UI, and we'll be integrating them through the playtest. And while we're providing comprehensive instructions, we identified that there are 3 user groups of museum staff: administrators, tour organizers, and tour presenters. We separate the working space for them to work on different tasks of different complexity. Administrators are the most tech-savvy and in charge of account and database management. Thus, they'll have the full access of the WordPress feature in the dashboard. Tour organizers, on the other hand, are in charge of gathering tour materials, designing talking points, and assembling them into a tour. They'll be responsible for uploading the media and creating talking points with them in the dashboard. To make it simple and intuitive, other WordPress dashboard features will be hidden from them. And in the front-end UI, organizers could create a tour and have the option to set it visible for all museum staff. And lastly, tour presenters are the ones to present the tour in live sessions or Zoom. So their working space is completely in the front-end UI, where they could create private tours, which are only visible for themselves, custom tour created by organizers, and finally give the live presentation to the guest. Okay, and coming next, Kat will be talking about our playtest.
Thanks, Ning-Shan. So on the topic of playtesting, let's look at what we've tested so far. The playtests we've run so far can be categorized into 3 different areas we're testing for: approachability, how willing are the users to interact with our tool; intuitive process. This goes back to our theme of simplicity. It measures the goal of allowing museum staff to create and present the tour the way that they think it should be done. And finally, comfort level. This refers to our users' comfort level with using the website's mechanics, such as how comfortable they feel moving through the available stops to select the one they're looking for. So explaining each of these playtests a bit further, ET Secrets was a playtest in which we tested the process of running the tour with all the bells and whistles. The one-to-one playtest with our 4 museum partners last week was mainly to test how tour organizers react in these 3 areas. The tour with our own Rebecca Lombardi will give us the opportunity to test how comfortable tour presenters feel giving the tour. And in that one, we'd like to use the website and use much less documentation. And for the last one, we'd like to play test with all 5 of our museum partners on October 30th by way of survey and presenting them with design mockups so that we can test additional features before we implement them. So I'd like to pass it off to Derek to talk about future playtesting plans and our schedule.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. So closing out here, what are our next steps from here and for the remainder of the semester? So based on the conversation we had from those involved playtests with our 4 museums last week, we were fortunate enough to get on the order of 12 to 15 staff members, as well as from feedback we heard from Anna herself in communicating with each institution individually. This is a list of priorities or kind of needs organized in terms of most important to in order of decreasing importance. So let's unpack the first one, presentability. So presentability touches upon a need that sounds something like the following. As an administrator, I want a website to appear presentable to guests and to communicate my museum's identity. One of the things we're so grateful to the pre-production team for was an offline prototype that mocked up a lot of both features and appearance. So while we've been focusing on getting a lot of those features into the functional build, we'd like to take a chance to iterate on the appearance specifically. If a museum is using this for their guests, they want a tool that they can feel proud showing to guests. One comment from our playtest last week was from Falling Water. I want this website to look like an extension of our current website. In some ways that's possible. In other ways, that might exceed the scope of this semester. So moving on to intuitive/approachable, Kat alluded to the fact that we had kind of extensive step-by-step instructions. So shifting the, besides those instructions, our playtesters felt very confident using them. Besides those instructions, they expressed the desire to engage with the tool. So removing those instructions, or rather creating a space where they're less dependent on those instructions is the goal of that. And a conversation-driven image search system, a bit more complex, but I'll unpack that in the schedule. So as you can see, we're prioritizing presentability and intuitiveness at the top, as well as taking a chance to reflect on, you notice a conversation-driven image search system represented here by a front-end media library. So wrapping up, we are museum.live. We are developing a website and documentation for museum staff to execute and design virtual experiences for their guests. These virtual tours occur over Zoom and are assisted by a website-based tool. And we are now open for questions. And there are some topics, if you'd like to hear some topics also on our mind for you guys to answer for us. Thank you.
All right, congratulations team, good job. And if anybody has any questions, just put them in the chat and Dave will call on you.
Would you prefer screen share continue or screen share discontinue?
Sometimes it's nice to leave it on if people want to refer to your slides. Oh, and Mike has a question, go for it, Mike.
Yeah, so I've been to lots of museums where they live off volunteers. And so the volunteers make tours, give tours. They get rewarded almost never in money. Either it's because they know their tour is very popular or they see smiles. That last step of reward, is that something you should consider? You have prepare and present, but what about reward, especially for people like volunteer docents?
Yeah, I can take a quick stab at that. I guess I would say that our current flow, you could think of the imaginary like third one, kind of that improvise or like connect almost improvisationally. We've previously used the phrase improvisationally to indicate that. That's a good question. In what ways? Did you have any specific like thoughts on how a reward phase, what that might look like?
I think you can't put everybody in the same bucket, but some people just like their own ego. They want authorship. I made this tour. Others want to know their tour is very popular. Lots of people are using my tour. I just think there needs to be some reward systems that you put in place. It's not just going to be paid museum staff if it's a typical museum. How do you encourage the volunteer community to make tours, give tours? There's something else I think you need besides just tools to make and tools to present.
Yeah, I think as Ningshan, what would your thoughts be? You mentioned kind of like the levels of, kind of different users have different workspaces, right? So integrated into WordPress, we have some of that. Ningshan, do you have any thoughts like on a technical level what that might look like?
Yeah, I guess one thing we already have this in the design is that we're going to show who's the author of this tour and as well as the tour date. So that's like one possible way of like giving credit to the author. Yeah.
Jesse, your question?
Yeah, I saw that you had support for a full screen when you were looking at images, which makes sense, but very often people want to look especially closely. Is a zoom feature with especially high-res images something you've considered?
Yeah, so as Derek mentioned, so presentability is our focus after Halves. So we would definitely consider any other features that will make it like more present ready, or will help the like the tour guests can like get explicitly about the details on the tour and the media file. So yes, definitely that's something we will look into and consider.
Great, thanks.
Mo, go ahead.
I might have missed this, but usually when you go to a museum, there, especially certain museums, the museum is really the main attraction of the experience rather than some of the artwork involved or in the museum. Any consideration to personalizing it from that point of view to the museum?
I could share a little bit on this. So something that we did with the Cone Wing tour with the museum one-on-ones that we tested last week was we played around with actually having a stop in our tour that is about the background of the museum. So like, yeah, like what does the building look like when you walk into it? What are the different rooms that you'd be seeing these different pieces in? So we're starting to get into that, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I would just add to that real briefly. Kat alluded to the ET Secrets playtest, right? So that was kind of a scaling up bells and whistles tour, as well as Grace mentioned, right? Like giving the museum like as a physical space or even as a personality, giving it an identity in the tool is something we've thought about previously, but I think the tools necessary to do that, right? Having a camera in the Zoom call, having someone else to moderate between a camera in a space, was something that during our playtest staff expressed a lot of intimidation, right? They want to do it, but they recognize that in order to scale this up for their whole team, that workarounds might be required in order to give the museum personality a chance to speak for itself.
All right, that's time. So good job, team. Congratulations. Thank you very much. So if you can unmute yourselves and turn your video off, and if hyperpickle can, or flip that, if hyperpickle can get ready and unmute themselves, what I said, you're doing it. You're awesome. I'm coming. Thank you for the consistent backgrounds. I think that's everyone.
Yeah, cool.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Share. And present. Okay, so I guess we can start. We are Team Hyperpickle, and this is the team. I am JD, so I'm one of the co-producers of the team. And this is our faculty instructors, Ruth and Heather. And this is our client, the CMU Scilab. This is a team consists of a group of professionals working on cutting-edge research as well as education on cybersecurity issues. And PicoCDF is a 2-week-long online cybersecurity contest hosted by our client. This contest is mainly targeting at middle school and high school students. And during the contest, the contestants are assigned with a number of CDF challenges, which takes them to reverse engineer, decrypt, or hack, or do whatever it takes to solve them. And our team, Hyperpickle, is creating a web game for PicoCDF 2021. Our game will act as a wrapper for the CDF challenges, which means that the players should be able to access those CDF challenges while enjoying an engaging gameplay. Our key matrices are our client requirements, gameplay, and the quality assurance, which is mainly our performance of the game on low-end PCs and also the code robustness. We're having weekly Zoom meetings with our client and more frequent Discord communications and working collaboratively with them to design and implement the game together. Next, I'll hand over to Liang Zhen to talk about our process.
Thank you, JD. I'm Liang Zhen, the game designer and co-producer on the team. So the salient point of working on a delivery project is really to know the target audience and understand the client requirements so we can set goals accordingly. During our communication, we got to know that the majority of our contestants will be middle to high school students with little to intermediate cybersecurity knowledge. And our client wanted our game to do the following things: to engage them in the game, to encourage them to answer different questions, and to entertain them with a fun and positive content. We will not be, however, making an educational game or design the challenges by ourselves. So having clarified our goals, we started off by looking at former Pickle CTL projects and played the 2019 game, which is the only one available now. Everything was fun till we were blocked by some harder challenges which we had to answer. Otherwise, the game wouldn't progress. Being blocked by a single challenge and not being able to experience the full story can be really frustrating. So, also, we've been told that some players are unwilling to jump out of their comfort zone and try challenges in different categories, and we need to satisfy different players with different tastes in theming. So here's our initial solution. We wanted to build a game where challenges are related to, but not blocking our progression. And we wanted to give players strong rewards and to avoid making typical male or hacker stereotypes in the theming. And the team went on studying some of the game categories that might be helpful. We learned the non-stop game flow from idle games, new elements every stage, interesting choices, sense of progression, and we wanted to combine those skilled elements in our game to make a game that achieves our goal. By the time of quarters, the team had made 3 rounds of pitches with more than 20 ideas and built a backend API mockup. And during quarters, we realized that most of our game still lacks some detailed world building stuff, and we need a more juicy story to motivate our players. And we, speaking of motivation, we want to have new ways to motivate them to progress in our game. Also, we need to be extremely cautious about our scoping, especially story-wise and art-wise. And now, having absorbed the feedback, the team is proud to present our game in progress. Next, I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Liang Zhen. I'm Andrew, a game designer on the team. So from our research and brainstorming, we arrived at a space exploration game with an economy built on PicoCTF challenges. So the player is a lead diplomat of an interstellar trade organization and is tasked to go explore a star system that has signs of intelligent life. Their hyperjump module breaks after entering the system. So the player must befriend the intelligent creatures of the system via trade to get the parts needed to repair the hyperjump module and return home. Our core gameplay loop will have the player traveling to different planets, mining resources on the uninhabited planets, and trading resources on the inhabited ones. After a good amount of traveling, players can spend their acquired resources on ship upgrades. So solving CTF challenges rewards players with an amount of a special token, which functions much like a mobile game premium currency. The tokens can be spent on speeding up travel time or instantly getting some resources the player is missing in order to complete an upgrade. Instead of spending real money, our players will solve challenges to get this premium currency. Our game will have 8 planets to visit, with 4 of them being inhabited. Each of those 4 will have a unique resource for trade. Here's a chart showcasing how the different inhabitants value resources in game. For example, the Yeans will pay more for nitrate, as it is an important component for the fertilizer they use in the process of growing Yea berries, their main export. In addition to game mechanic related upgrades to one spaceship, we also have cosmetic upgrades planned as well, some of which can be acquired by spending resources while others are awarded for completing challenge related achievements. Those span from dipping your toe into each challenge category to showcasing mastery over a specific challenge category. Now I'll hand it over to Evelyn to talk about our art.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm Evelyn, and I'm the 3D artist on the team. So after we finalizing our basic game design, we start working on the world building. Our setting's first goal is to be convincing to the players, who are the smart high school students. We built our world from the reference of solar system and also use scientific data for the planet's geology to make it logical. The second goal is to make the game intriguing. So we created unique features and resources on the planets and added historic context for the world. The game art needs to support the game design, background story, and also increase the game's fun. After we have the world building prepared, we quickly start creating assets for the game. On the right is our asset list, which details the minimum requirement for our game, and on the left are the models we made at the current progress. We will develop more habitable planets if we complete the minimum goal earlier. For the art style, we decided to create a stylized art style by combining both the realistic details and the cartoon outlook to create more fun. Since we have already built, we need to build a web game, and that strictly depends on the size of the model. We first create high poly models and then remesh it and reduce the poly count to create a low poly one. Then we bake the high poly model features onto the low poly one's texture. We use the low poly model with the realistic details on it, which satisfy both the technical and aesthetic requirements. For the tech art part, we implemented the universal render pipeline built on WebGL platform, which allows us to create customized shaders and also create stylized graphics in the scene. So here are the contrast images. On the left is our original scene, and on the right is the scene after applying the customized shaders, which creates fake shadows to mimic the light and shadows on the planets when they orbit around the sun. It not only increases the credibility of the galaxy, but also improves the look. And then Muzi is going to talk more about the tech part.
Thanks, Evelyn. I'm Muzi. I am a programmer in our team. So this is a general pipeline of our development. We are taking in client data from backend server, and then our target is a WebGL game. So we will develop on the Unity platform where we are taking in the storytelling part and then the model and UI design from artists. So during our gameplay development, we distribute the development effort by functionality. So there are several basic game elements. The first category would be space interaction, which includes including traveling, trading, and mining. And we also have spaceship interaction, like upgrading our spaceship. And we also want to display our achievement in an interesting way. So we try our best to maintain a sustainable development environment so that we can keep on iterating and optimizing our project. We also try to lower the load of rendering because we, in our game, we're expecting a lot of 3D models and canvas. Our real world application scenario will be on Chromebook. So we get a Chromebook from EDC to do our daily branch test and weekly performance test. In terms of backend communication, we need to connect to the context server. So a proper protocol and efficient data formats are needed. We allow the player to we allow the player to fetch and answer question, and then we also allow them to save and restore the game status because they can close the window at any time, and then when they come back, they should be able to be returned to where they were. We also have some tech challenges. The first one we want to collaborate with our client in the future is that we want to use the HTML PicoCTF challenge integration, which is a reusable and interactable module. And what we already have a solution is the anti-cheating part, because we don't want the player to simply modify the local time and make a progression in our game. So next, Aiden will walk through our demo.
Thank you, Muzi. I'm Aiden. I'm the programmer in the team. So this is our demo, and this is the solar system view. As you can see, the planets are slowly revolving the sun, and this is our main scene of the game. So in the solar system scene, if the player clicks on a planet, the camera will zoom in, and the game will show the information of that planet. Here you can see the estimated travel time, After the player clicks on go, the solar system view will tell the remaining time, and this is the idle game element in our game. We also have a boost button. Currently, it's just reducing the travel time by 10 seconds, but in the future, it will consume the tokens which the players earn from answering CDF questions, challenges, yeah. So if you are already on a planet that has inhabitant, the player can trade with them. Here is the trading UI prototype. There are two lists. One is what the player provides, and one is what the player requests. We have a value system for the resources, and the inhabitants will evaluate this trade. And after the trading, the player's inventory will upgrade accordingly. Update accordingly. Sorry. So these are two basic interaction model prototype in our game, and we will also implement other systems in the future. Next, JD will talk about the future plan.
Yeah, thank you, Aiden. So this is our production timeline. So starting from now, we will keep iterating on the game assets and putting all the game design elements into the game while we are having our weekly code merge and debug and also test. And by ETC playtest day, we should already have a placeable build and perform some playtest. And according to the playtest feedbacks, we are going to modify our game designs as well as some of the art assets according to them, and have all the core gameplay finished by soft. And after that, we'll keep on polishing all the details and have our final deliverable handoff by the end of the semester. And our game will be online in March of the next year. A lot of thanks to our client as well as all the people who have helped us within this semester. And to wrap up, we are hyperpickle, and we are creating a web game for Pico CDF 2021. Our game will act as a wrapper for the CDF challenges. So we are now open for questions.
All right, congratulations, team. Good job. Thank you very much. So anybody want to put their questions in chat, and Dave will call on you.
I've got a question. So I get the sense that you're designing a game to help motivate players to do these challenges. How will you know that the game itself is engaging students and carrying them through, and not itself becoming like a barrier to access the challenges? Like, how do you know that the motivation is working?
So the question is, how do we know that the game itself is motivating the players and not blocking the players away from properly answered questions? Is it what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody in the team want to have that? Yeah, Liang, please.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I guess one of the important issue we want to do after the Halves is to help playtests before the playtest day, just to make sure that our game core concepts are doing well. And also, since we've been studying different game genres, we learned some of the core elements that makes that genre fun. For example, for idle games, you can be idle for all the time, but it's really sometimes when you are playing a game, that makes the game more effective. So we want that part to be implemented into our game, which is when you answer the challenges, you get some kind of tokens, which can be used to accelerate the travel or other things. So we learn from different games and put some of the elements that we think might work in our game. But definitely we're gonna have more playtests after the Halves to make sure that this is actually working.
Thanks. Ricardo, you got a question?
Yes. So I was looking at your representation of space and the planets in space. I saw on your schedule that you plan to go back and add some art polish. Can you talk more about what you plan to do with space and the representation of the planets to give it more depth and just more visual interest?
Yeah, sure. So, Evelyn, you want to take that question?
Yeah, so basically for our art test, currently we have our minimum requirements, which is to create 8 planets in the galaxy, and also 4 of them are habitable. And we will also have 4 inhabitants characters for this game basic requirements. And I guess for the rest of the semester, we'll first try to complete art goals for all these requirements. And if we finish them earlier, we will probably take the last 2 weeks to some polishing and to make it better fit for the whole thing, and also support the game background story. And also beyond that 2 weeks polishing, we still have extra time. I guess maybe we'll squeeze the time and to make 1 more habitable planets that will increase the gameplay of the game, increase more interaction in this game. Yeah.
Time for one more.
Steve, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure that you have discussed the tech handoff with your clients. If this is the same client I'm thinking of, this shouldn't be an issue, but you know, they have a web server, they have the back end to support what you're planning on deploying, all that.
Yeah, so we already have a very early API mockup even between the quarters, and it proves that we are communicating well with the client server. So now we actually have our game build hosted on our client server, and although the server for hosting the game content is up, there are some logical things that aren't up for now, and we will continue working with our client to have that all set up, and that will be the link for our playtest. So yeah.
All right, thanks team. Great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay. So if you can mute yourselves and turn off your cameras. And then if mixthesia is ready, unmute yourselves and turn on your cameras.
No.
Just a heads up, if you have headphones, you can feel free to wear headphones since we're an audio project.
Is that everybody?
Yeah, I believe so.
Gotcha. Cool. Whenever you're ready.
All right, let me hit this button. Hit this button.
So yeah, as a quick reminder, Sam just said, we're going to be showing a demo of our project that uses stereo sound. So if you have headphones, we ask that you put them on so you'll be able to hear it. But okay, so we're Mixthesia. We're an exploratory project that is focused on discovering intuitive interactions in VR that introduces novice musicians to song mixing tools and concepts. I'm Brandon, the artist on the team, and this is the rest of our team. And our faculty are Heather Kelly and John Dessler. So a brief overview of our agenda today. I'm going to first talk about what our project is and what our overview of the whole process is. We're going to transition into talking about the design process and what we've currently built, then talk a little bit about our playtesting and what we've learned from it, and finish off with what we're going to be doing moving forward. So yeah, a brief overview first. We're going to start with a quick look at what music mixing is. So the mixing process occurs after the song has been written and recorded and is focused on manipulating the individual tracks of the song to reach a desired audio quality. The 3 main aspects of mixing are levels and panning, which is adjusting the volume of each track and changing their position on the right versus left stereo spectrum. Second one is applying effects on the tracks, and these are things such as reverb, echo, and equalization. And the final property is manipulating the properties of the tracks, which is an example is automating the tracks to change the properties previously mentioned throughout the song. So with that being said, what are we trying to do with our project? what we're essentially trying to do is prototype and experiment with visualizing sound mixing tools and concepts in a VR space and ultimately document our findings for future projects. Our inspiration behind this is that digital audio workstations, which is the software that is used for song mixing, they're very intimidating to newcomers, and they will often find experts telling them to picture something in their head to explain how the tools and concepts work with the sound. We hope to capture those visualizations in VR in the hopes that our experience could help teach newcomers about these tools. Two things we're not trying to do. First off, we're not trying to create a VR digital audio workstation. And secondly, we're not using spatial audio in our experience. What we're building is meant to be something of a transition or a tutorial to DAWs. And since DAWs work within a sound stereo setup, we want to present them with the same type of sound that they'll be using to mix professionally. So looking at who our audience is, on the product side, it's focused on novice musicians and music enthusiasts who want to learn the sound mixing process. However, since we're primarily focused on discovering, the audience for our documentation is focused on any groups who may be interested in the VR sound mixing space to learn from our findings. The project is meant to be almost a liftoff of sorts for future projects to build from. And because our goal is to explore what visualizations for sound mixing work in the VR space, our metrics are focused on the documentation of each of the prototypes we create and what we've learned from the playtest of these prototypes. Our goal is to explore at least 3 tools and 2 concepts by the end of the semester with playtesting data that showcases how well our visualizations work to explain the topic. Also, along with the dev blog we're creating for our website, we've also begun to create documents that are focused on each of the prototypes and delve more deeply into the tech and the design for each and what we've learned throughout the process. And we plan to post this documentation to various online forums for others who want to explore in this space. So why are we using VR specifically for this project? Like I stated earlier, many sound mixers initially learn the mixing tools and concepts through visual associations. We aim to leverage those associations within our prototypes in order to immerse them in the visualization itself that is used to explain the tool. We believe that placing them in the space itself will better help them understand the tool that they're using. Also, placing them in the same space as the instruments themselves allow them to have a feeling of presence with the instruments. Like a conductor of an orchestra, they now get to see how the placement of each instrument affects the overall sound in VR space, as opposed to reading a 2D screen of dials and sliders. And I will now hand it over to Sam to talk a little bit about our design process.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm Sam. I'm the programmer and designer on the team. Before diving into designing and prototyping, we interviewed 6 industry professionals about what's in their head when they do mixing, and also sent out surveys to novice musicians asking their experience learning mixing. Among all the major takeaways, two most significant ones being that, first, VR has the advantage of allowing musicians to be in the same space as music tracks and to physically move them around. And second, apart from prototyping on mixing tools, there's a whole other dimension of conceptual guidelines that are also worth exploring. These insights we got from talking to industry professionals and novice musicians really solidified our choice of VR and formed our design guidelines. Our initial design approach was that we start with prototyping on mixing tools such as volume, panning, and reverb, and then move on to mixing concepts such as AudioCube. We were planning to make basic functionalities first, and then subsequently add individual tools into the experience as the prototyping goes on. So essentially, we were going to discover through prototypes while also making a cohesive product experience at the same time. During quarters, we received a lot of feedback from faculties about our approach. Here are a few main takeaways. The first one being that our experience could also cater to non-musicians, as it allows them to create personalized listening experiences of songs they like, which led to us including non-musicians during our playtests. The second one is that some guests experienced the dissonance between the stereo audio and the 3D VR space, to which making guests grab and wear a pair of virtual headphones in the VR space could be a solution. The third one is to be careful about breaking immersion while changing the environment, and the last one being a huge amount of confusion from faculties about what exactly our deliverable is. Is it more about a cohesive product, or is it more about rapid prototyping and the findings? Based on the quarter's feedback, we refined our design approach. We're still starting with mixing tools and then moving on to conceptual guidelines. For each single prototype, the design happens a week ahead with pre-surveys of some paper prototypes. We'll then go on to make one or more actual prototypes and then subsequently playtest on them and document the results. Apart from faculty's confusion about our deliverables during quarters, We as a team also realized that iterations on product started influencing our thought process on prototyping. This prompted us to rethink our prototypes. Our current approach is to have every prototype only focus on one specific tool or concept, with the basic functionality being the backbone. This way, we're able to expedite the prototyping process, making it possible to develop multiple prototypes at the same time, and therefore fully focus on discovery. Now I'm going to hand over to Shiva to talk about our prototypes.
Thanks, Sam. I'm Shiva. I'm the audio programmer on the team. So before we look at the prototypes we built, we just wanted to give you a brief overview of our audio pipeline. We researched and decided to use Fmod as our audio middleware. Since most of the prototypes work with different tracks of a particular song, we either use license-free stems. Stems are basically individual elements of a song, or our own music exported as stems from a DAW like Logic or Reaper. Then we set up these tracks inside Fmod as separate events in Fmod's language. We then built a framework in Unity that allowed us to use each of these events like a track and have control over each of these tracks like how you would inside a DAW. Our first prototype was used to test this entire pipeline, and we were able to get this working in the first few weeks of the semester. So we have built prototypes for two different tools for now. The first one being volume and panning, and the second one being reverb. We chose these since these are one of the most fundamental concepts and people use when they start to mix music. So we'll show you a quick demo of two of such prototypes that we built. Yeah, now I'll hand it over to Isabel to talk about our playtesting and documentation process.
Thanks, Shiva. I'm Isabel. I'm the UX designer of the team. So the purpose of our playtest is to gain insights on how these three types of people, novice musicians, non-musicians, industrial professionals, to understand our prototype, layout, and the functions. We used three methods to playtest our four prototypes, including the prototype 0, our initial interaction concepts, and our prototype 1, combining the volume and panning function into a new track fill layout along with the basic functionalities. And two most recent prototypes are visualizing reverb tool in two different ways. And as you can see, we have less playtesters for prototype 0 because it was just a quick demo with only the layout. However, the overall distribution of the playtest is quite reasonable because we focus on playtesting with novice musicians. And after we build our design, we start our 1-week cycle for playtesting. The process consists of 3 parts. The first part, we playtest using these 3 methods. And the second part, we collect feedback from 2 different surveys for novice and non-musicians. Also, we interview with industry professionals afterwards. And the third part is sending out a pre-survey to collect some ideas about how novice musicians understand certain sound mixing tools. The feedback will be inspiration for our next prototype. And our takeaways can mostly be categorized into 3 points. First, the majority of feedback from the survey is about 2D interface. We learned that the buttons should be more accessible and the labelings should be clearer. And second, we collect insights from industry professionals to put in the documentation, and it is still in progress. And most importantly, it was the in-person playtest that let us witness the powerful moments when novice musicians came to a conceptual understanding of a more complex functionality such as reverb. And through their interactions during the playtest and the inquiries afterwards, we acknowledge that whether the concept and the visualization of a tool clicked with them. And here are a few quotes that we collect from the playtests. Our documentation will be prototype based, and each prototype document will list out our findings for each design and the technical details. It will be for all kinds of people who are interested in exploring sound mixing, visualization, and interactions in VR. And for each document, we plan to label them with 8 classifications as listed. We also included the link to the document for people who are interested. And now I'll hand it over to Pavan to talk about our next steps.
Thank you, Isabel. Let me first take you through our goals and objectives. The primary goal of our project is to prototype the interactions for several tools and concepts. The learnings and takeaways from these prototypes will be documented in a format that is intended to inform developers who would want to take this forward, either as an educational tool or to make enjoyable mixing toys. We also intend to add post-mortem analyses of these prototypes by creating prototype-specific documents and put them on our website, sharing links to these articles and documents on online forums such as musictech.net and Gamasutra Audio, and also using social media sites like Twitter and Reddit to inform the community about our findings. Next, I'll talk a bit about our challenges. We depend on industry professionals to evaluate the learnings from our prototypes, but the turnaround time for feedback is currently too high. And verifying if the players are transferring their understanding of the tools and concepts requires us to be in person or follow up with them over an extended period of time. While we are managing to do the former, the latter is still proving to be a little difficult. The questions that we are trying to answer through these prototypes are applicable only to a small group of developers. Nonetheless, we want our learnings to solve as a baseline for things to come. And finally, the CPU overhead on the Oculus Quest for songs that have more than 10 tracks is too high, but this can be dealt with during production. I'm going to talk a little bit about our timeline. After Halves, we have effectively 6 weeks of development. During this time, we'll be prototyping more tools such as EQ and automation and the mixing concept of the audio cube. We also want to explore one of our earlier concepts of the song layout in a bit more detail if time permits. So to summarize, we are Team Mixthesia and we are exploring intuitive interactions for mixing in VR. Our objective is to ease the learning curve of mixing and share our discoveries with the audio community. We would like to thank these individuals for providing us with the insights that inspired our explorations. We're now open to questions.
All right, great job, team. Congratulations. Thank you very much. So, questions in the chat, and Dave can call on you. Oh, go, Mike.
Yeah, I'm curious about some of your findings, especially something that you didn't expect. Can you just talk through something you didn't expect from one of your prototypes that was uncovered?
I can take that question. Initially, when we started prototyping, we thought creating some visualizations for adjectives that are often used in terms of mixing will be useful. But then what happened was the other way around, where people, when they got into the experience, they started associating their own adjectives to what they're seeing. It kind of like was a reinforcement for their understanding of certain things. So it was an interesting realization that as subjective as this process is, it still helped them to kind of strengthen that abstract associations of adjectives that they had in their head when thinking about some audio concepts.
I got a question kind of related to that. Do you have a sense of anything you might present as like learnings to the audience you want to reach? Like, is it basically any insight for your kind of narrow specific audience that you have discovered already?
Sure. So this can come in two ways. Like one, purely in terms of the tech side of things, where something like Fmod that we're using as an audio middleware is not really designed to be a DAW of sorts. But then through this process, one insight could be how it could potentially be used in that context. But also from the educator's point of view or the professional's point of view, who often are in a situation to teach mixing concepts to people, some insights could be that the visualizations that we are showing here could act as a direct material for them to actually show their students when they're starting to teach them some of these concepts. And the insight from that would be that some of these work, and some of these don't work. We are still in the process of like understanding from professionals, but we think that is also going to be something valuable.
Thanks. Shirley, you have a question?
Yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of potential for you to either have your findings published or enter into conferences or something. Have you looked into any of those, and which ones, if you have?
I can take this. So we did initially want to present at the Audio Developers Conference, but the time span for registering and with a topic was too short, and we might consider presenting at the upcoming ADC next year. But in the meantime, we want to keep these findings as discoveries and not as formal research, although we have explored and we are aware of how we could take this forward. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Steve, you have a question?
Were you guys using the built-in hand tracking on the Quest?
No, we have not dealt with that. We have not dealt with hand tracking yet.
Does it have its own processing, or does it add load to your overall?
It's just that in terms of interactions, something that came up often when we were talking to professionals is the sense of tactility that knobs and faders give. So that is something that you might lose when you move to hand tracking, purely hands. So we wanted to stick to controllers for now. Not really in terms of overload a CPU or something like that, but we just stuck to controllers for that purpose.
All right, that's time. Thanks, team. Really good job. So if you can mute yourself, turn your cameras on. And protochamp, if you can unmute yourself and turn your cameras on. Team backgrounds. Thank you. Did I get you all? Yes?
We got one more, Eton.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep, that's
okay,
everyone.
Fine. I'll add him too. Whenever y'all are ready.
Yeah, let me quickly share my screen. All right. All right, team. Give me a thumb up if you're ready. Cool. Looks great. All right. So let's get it started. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Team Protochamp's Halves presentation. I'm Michael, the producer on the team. And here's our whole team members. And here's our faculty advisors. And add on to that, this is a faculty pitch discovery project, which means we don't have clients for our project. And so our project is all about the exploration of exercise gaming. As you may have heard before, exercise gaming is to combine the traditional exercise experience with new gaming technologies so that people can have joyful gaming experience and meanwhile benefit from doing exercise. For this project, we will start by taking a traditional exercise bike pedal platform and explore new media experience geared towards gamers. To do this, We will create a custom hardware solution to obtain bike speed, resistance, and more. We will also focus primarily on documenting the iterative content creations and designing engaging paradigms for exergaming. Based on the project goals, we value prototyping, gameplay, interactivity, and documentations as the most important in our matrix metrics. And for the hardware, we will first start with just the RPM cadence sensor attached to the pedal cycle. The cadence sensor will give us RPM data, which we can use to calculate the speed. As we develop more prototypes, we will decide if more hardware is required. Now I will pass it to Aubrey to talk about related work in this exergaming field.
Thanks, Michael. I'm Aubrey. I'm the UI UX designer of this team. From past ETC project OnTrack and Cardio Active, we have the general understanding about how exercise games work and some design pitfalls. OnTrack makes the social connections between players by having them share their self-designed game levels and content. Cardio Active promotes cooperative exercise experience of players and take heart rate of the players as a power source in the game. Their design opened up our mind for more design possibilities such as customization, social connections, and natural body reactions for exercise games. We also look into the exercise games that are very popular in the market. There are Ring Fit Adventure, which provides instant feedback to the players, Peloton, which allows real-time professional training with different locations, and Espresso Bike, which provides an immersive gaming experience for the players in order to increase the enjoyment of doing exercise. And those products inspire us to carefully think about consistency, the professionalism, and enjoyment of gameplay design. We took academic researchers into considerations too, in order to design exercise games that are able to meet the actual health purposes by understanding the physical and mental changes of humans during exercise. We then look into ETCers' habits of doing exercise and receive some very useful feedback about their situation during the lockdown period. Based on our findings about motivations and exercise pattern, we found out that most people do exercise for maintaining a life balance and refreshing from their busy work. People tend to choose the type of exercise that they are more familiar with. People prefer to choose the type of exercise that they are easy to stick with, and for each time they exercise, people tend to maintain a longer period of time so they can actually feel the body changes. And based on that, we picked one of the most common exercise equipment shown in the survey, the bike machines, and dig deeper into people's feeling about it. First, since nearly 80% of people had experience with exercise bike machine, so we don't force them to learn from new. People who use exercise bike machines, they use it for more than 20 minutes each time. So we need to consider a longer gameplay experience with the exercise bike. We further asked about the reason of people choosing an exercise game and what people value the most. So we can take that as a motivation for our games. And based on that, we decided to start with the enjoyable, creative, and naive guest-friendly gameplay for people of all ages and are facing the situation of not able to exercise outdoor. Next, Simon will talk about our first prototype.
Thanks, Aubrey. I'm Simon, the artist of the team. So at the very beginning of this semester, shortly after we settled down the hardware, we started with a sample idea to associate the paddle with unicycle, and we decided to use the intuitive interaction to guide the player. We also start with a very broad question to answer. What is the key factor of engagement in exergaming? And based on this thought, we built our first prototype. So this is the one we made before we get the pedal and the sensor. We use the phone shaking to mimic the movement. After that, we implement the combination of pedal and RPM sensor to this prototype. The result is actually not as good as we thought. We encountered some problem, as you can see in the video, like latency. So for this unicycle idea, we designed 4 levels, and currently we made first 2, which includes a traversing through some floating island and stop at the right spot. we designed the spinning barrels and curved trails for future levels. Both of them requires player to control the speed while paddling. We noticed several points in this prototype. So the first is the interval between paddling and idle turn into interruption when game relies entirely on this mechanism. And we also realized that we need more feedback to build the connection between paddling and cycling. Also, it would be make more sense if player can paddle backwards. And we also realized that we need to further define our target audience in order to answer the question that we have put before. And next, Stephanie will talk about feedback we got from quarters.
Thanks, Simon. I'm Stephanie and I'm a programmer on the team. After our first prototype, we had quarters, and here's the most common feedback we received. We revisited our work and plan before we continued making prototypes. We first started by redefining our target audience. We looked at the survey results again and narrowed our audience down to college-age students who play video games but also want to keep fit. We then pinpointed onto students that are currently working from home due to the pandemic and have an inconsistent schedule where they work around 8 or more hours a day. Then we listed different barriers to working out, both from our survey and from research. The largest barriers from our target audience are not having enough time and not having someone to work out with, but all of the listed barriers have an impact on why they don't work out. Many of the barriers compound onto each other. For example, if someone doesn't have a lot of free time to work out, why would they spend a lot of money on something or continue doing a workout if it's boring or isn't showing results? There's a lot that we haven't listed too, so there's many barriers to working out. We also looked at different models for player types, and we're using the Kersey temperaments. We're considering different player groups as we create our future prototypes. A major way we're separating ourselves from existing products is that we're focusing on the current pandemic's restrictions and barriers that some products aren't tackling. Some require too much extra time, some are too expensive, some are boring for our target audience, and some are just too hard to stick with. We also talked to a personal trainer at CMU named Randy George, special thanks to him. We learned important information about working out on a bike pedal system. Two different training types that we talked about are high intensity interval training and low intensity steady state. And we have listed their long-term times that you should use them for listed. We also discussed possible ways to measure long-term change, such as with heart rate, and then different ways to prevent injury while using the pedal system. We will apply this knowledge as we continue making prototypes. Next, Yitung is going to talk about our second prototype.
Thanks, Steph. I'm Yitung. I'm a programmer on the team. After the quarter, we start to narrow down our target user. For this prototype, we focus on the user who spend many hours sitting on a seat, working from home, and want to find a way to take exercise. In the player model, they are idealists who seek inner change. We started to design our prototype by reviewing our daily routine and came up with these design pillars. We all found that everyone in our team has lots of online meetings, so we want to think how to exercise while meeting. And also we want to keep exercising and form exercise habit. So we anticipate the exercise is long and sticky. We found that peer pressure is also a motivation for us. So we want our user to keep connect with people after work. And we designed the game flow according to the low intensity state. And here are some questions we want to answer by this prototype. First, will the game distract when players are working or in the meeting? Second, is the user engagement sticky enough that player will come back to play the game every day? The last question is, how can we make players feel connect with friends in this game? For the last question, since it's a single player prototype, if we decide to go deeper with this idea, we will build a multiplayer version and answer this question. And here's our demo video. And it is idle game. So the goal is to build and develop an empty planet. The way to obtain resources and money for building facilities is by collecting the plants on the planet. And the growing speed of the plants depends on players' paddling speed. In the demo video, we speed up the playing rate to demonstrate the gameplay. Here's the flowchart and the viewpoint outline for our prototype. We have designed 2 different viewpoints for the game, and we're currently developing based on the second one, since it will be much easier for players to collect resources and build a whole planet. And we learned several things in this prototype. First, we test this prototype during several Zoom meetings and found that paddling while meeting won't distract the player or other in the meeting. Second, adding visual effect and feedback will improve the collection experience. And for the idle games, the collection function can enhance user stickiness and engagement, and will lead our user to keep play the game. Next, Ryan will talk about our third prototype.
Thanks, Tom. I'm Ryan, the technical artist on the team, and I'm going to talk about our third prototype. In the third prototype, we still focus on the similar target audience, but instead of making a game for them to do exercise while working, the third prototype focused more on doing exercise while really playing games. So our target audience in this prototype value gameplay more than exercise. In the player model, they are guardian and artisan, who are tactical and logistical. Accordingly, we set our design pillars for this prototype as getting fun from paddling, being distracted from physical exertion while paddling hard, and keeping challenging themselves to improve physical fitness. As a result, this game needs high-intensity interval training mode. By this prototype, we want to answer these two questions. The first is how to distract players from exertion. We will experiment this by a few mechanisms in our game, including keep operating mouse or phone to aim while paddling, transferring paddling speed to visual effects and sound in the game, and so on. The second question is that facility is one of the lenses of an exer gaming, and also one of the factors that the people we investigated value most. So we want to try if a single player game could achieve that. And here's the demo video of our third prototype. The user customized their robots by using different types of weapons to fit different levels. And each weapon has energy requirement, which will be summed up. The second stage is that user power the robot by paddling and defeat enemies. The more powerful the robot is, the more energy it will need. As a result, the faster the user should paddle. If the speed is lower than the requirement, the robot will not work. And this is the flowchart of this prototype. We also designed the third stage that after scoring and ranking the game, user could fight against the goals of highest score in the same level to get higher score. Currently, we only complete the first two stages. And here's what we learned from this prototype. First, the consistency between paddling and visual effects to help decrease the awareness of exertion. But to keep the distraction for a longer time, the level should be changing and the speed should not be extremely high. Second, we should provide presets together with customization to instruct players. Third, we noticed that it's hard to aim while paddling. If we want to distract players from paddling, we should decrease the precision of attack detection to not make them feel frustrated. And next, I will hand it back to Michael to talk about our future plans.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So here we are at the 8th week, and by next week, we will have our first prototype completed. And by the end of next week, we will look back into what we've built and learned in order to pick a direction as our final project to polish. We will be doing playtests ourselves, but also be prepared for the ETC playtest happening on the week of November 9th. We are currently aiming to complete a polished game experience by soft opening so that we could still have some buffer for improvement after we receive all the feedbacks. And by the end of the 15th week before final, we will summarize what we've learned during this project and make it into structured documentations. And to sum up, we are Team Protochamp, exploring the possibilities of exer gaming on the bike pedal platform by prototyping, designing engaging game interactivities, and documentations. And that's all for our presentation. We are now open for questions.
All right, congratulations, team. Good job. So if anybody has any questions, put them in chat, and Dave will call on you.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, for your high intensity training and high intensity game, are you designing it so that there's some logical rest points inside of it, or is it all fast all the time, pedal like crazy until it's done?
Yeah, so the question is for, I think this is for the third prototype. Are we having some design logic behind the high interval intensity training? Ryan, could you?
Sure, I could take this question. So in our design, each level would be very short, just fit the about 15 minutes per time for the total game length. And between each level, there will be some time for them stretching, as it's a result from interview with the physical trainer. So we haven't thought about that, but I think by applying the knowledge from the physical trainer, we will definitely have a stretching or cool down between each levels.
Shirley, you have a question?
Yeah, you may have said this and I just missed it. So if I did, I apologize. Was the bike prescribed that you had to use a bike, or did you research and decide that most people had a bike and so you use that rather than a treadmill or weights or Nordic track or whatever? And then just kind of a quick part two. Do you can you see stats either at the end of your workout or daily or weekly or something like heart rate and calories burned, and or is that out of scope?
Yeah, so the first question is why we choose this bike pedal platform. Okay, yeah, so the first question is why we choose this bike pedal platform, and the second is are we collecting the user data, like how much they exercise during like every week or so? So I think I can first answer the first question. We did some research for the related work, and we noticed that there's currently some existing product like the Espresso bike and the Peloton. The main reason that why we choosing this exercise bike pedal platform is because it is very portable and also affordable for us to playtest. And I think when we are targeting the user that currently having issue exercising from home, we want them to have some like easy to get access, which means that people can usually put this bike pedal under their desk and they can do exercise while they are working. And so this is one of our initial thought. And for the second questions, I think we have the plan of collecting the data in our second prototype, which is the idle game, that in our initial design, that since it will be a multiplayer game in the future, every user can see the total data of themselves and also the data that they other people they add as friend and see other people's data. Yeah.
I have another thing to mention is that in our second prototype, so you need to paddling daily to gain some kind of money to buy stuff in the game, and that money is in some way indicates how many calories you burned or how many distance you've already paddled. That's one way to show. And in the previous ETC project, we noticed that there's already a project using heart rate to see how the players is doing the exercise. So I think that will be possible. The difficult might be we need to get another sensor to connect it to our game, which mean also have some technical problem and also make our product to be more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and that's time. So congratulations, teams, and congratulations to all the teams. Good job doing Halves. Really good job, everyone, as we did it all through Zoom. So students, have a great rest of the evening. Enjoy your upcoming midterm break. Hopefully you'll be able to take a little bit of a break. And faculty, we will see each other in another Zoom. Take care, everybody. Have a nice night.
Thanks, Drew.